very much for joining us today. And I'm going to say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, because we're dialing in from different time zones, which is just fantastic. For those who may not know who I am, my name is Nerida Kelton, and I am the Vice President for Sustainability and Safe Food for the World Packaging Organization. And I have the honor of moderating this fabulous session tonight and with some amazing speakers. The first thing that I'd like to let you know is that we want lots of questions. And I know, guaranteed, there's going to be lots of questions tonight. So please use the question and answer function and pop them in, and don't be shy. And what we're going to do at the end of the presentations is we're going to have an open question and answer discussion with all of the speakers, and we'll answer some of those questions. Any questions that we don't answer tonight, we will certainly answer offline for all of you shortly. And I think it's really important, tonight's discussion, because it's not just about the PPRW. And for those who may not know what the PPWR is, it's the Packaging and Packaging Waste Regulation. For those who are aware of what it is, there are some very lively discussions and debates happening right now, and we're all watching with bated breath to see what's going to happen in Europe. The PPWR is a European Union regulation that's designed to reduce packaging pollution and, more importantly, help build a circular economy for packaging. It is designed to foster harmonization. And for me, this is critical from a WPO perspective, because this is harmonization across multiple countries and borders through Europe. The PPWR and all of the programs that are going to come out of it are designed to achieve a circular economy for packaging, but we need to make sure that it's economical and that it's recyclable and that all of the packaging is efficiently recycled. We also need to ensure that we have consistent design standards, and this is something that we are all talking about across the world. And the most important thing is to ensure that we have the evidence and the science-based LCA to back up all of the discussions that we're about to have tonight. So I'm going to firstly introduce you to the wonderful speakers. We have Manfred Tacker, the Managing Director of Circular Analytics. We have Lina Wimmer, the Senior Consultant for Circular Analytics, Charlotte Werner, the Senior Consultant for Circular Analytics, and Johanna from the Managing Director of Unfold. And our first speaker tonight will be Johanna. And please don't forget, ask lots of questions in the question and answer chat function. And Johanna, over to you for your presentation.
All right, thank you for the introduction. I'm going to start with a short overview of the regulation, legislation landscape of the European Union at the moment. And I'll start right into with a short overview of what's going on in the European Union concerning the legislation and all the regulations. I try to get to the next slides. Maybe it takes some time until it works. No, it doesn't. Now there we go. Okay, perfect. So what you can see here is like a short overview of the regulation concerning the ESG reporting. It all comes from the European Green Deal, which is a package of policy initiatives which aims to set the European Union on a path to a greener transition, with the ultimate goal of reaching climate neutrality by 2050, which is a quite ambitious goal. So the European Green Deal sets the vision and acts as a kind of a guiding principle for many other initiatives, which you can see in this overview. It's not a complete overview, but the most important, most relevant regulations that are in effect already or about to be implemented in the next couple of years. And what you can see here is the probably most important one, the CSRD, like the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, which requires large companies and also listed SMEs, small and medium enterprises, to report on their sustainability performance. And it comes into force with the beginning of this year for bigger companies. I will come right back to this topic later on. Also very important, the EU taxonomy regulation, which is a classification system which defines economic activities that can be considered environmentally sustainable, environmentally friendly, based on a specific criteria. The CSRD, it's the supply chain legislation, which is right now under negotiation in the European Parliament and in the Council. We didn't find an agreement right now. It's under negotiation at the moment, but it should ensure companies to take responsibility along the value chains to be responsible for negative impacts on human rights or environmental impacts throughout the entire value chain. And this bunch of regulations is just one part of a driver for sustainability reporting, for ESG reporting. There are some other drivers, and I would like to show them on the next slide, but I think there we go. Takes some time always. There are a bunch of other drivers that come into force for sustainability reporting besides the regulatory. There is a rising demand in transparency, especially from different stakeholders like investors, like end users, customers, and also throughout the whole supply chain. There is also a reputation issue, because communicating ESG relevant information is important for your stakeholders, so they will watch closely what companies are doing, what are they reporting, and how their performance is when it comes to environmental and social issues. And also very important topic is the employee retention and to position your company as an attractive employer on job markets. So these are other drivers besides the regulatory in the European Union. But to circle back to the regulatory, I promised to tell you a little bit more about the CSRD, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, which is a really important one and is currently really important for European companies, because it will affect many companies, many more companies than so far. We have to wait for the next slide, and then I can show you exactly the overview of the CSRD. And the CSRD was finalized in the last year. So the first draft was published in 2022, and the final draft was finalized in June 2023, and now we have the transposition into national law, which has to be finalized until June 2024. What is new within the CSRD? It expands the reporting obligations, because there are many disclosure requirements that have to be disclosed mandatory. And another new term is introduced. It's the double materiality, which defines how to identify the topics that a company needs to report on. There will be also mandatory external audits for the beginning, only with limited assurance. And they also introduced new reporting standards. If you ever heard about GRI, the Global Reporting Initiative standards, which is the most commonly used standards globally, the European Union now introduced their own standards for sustainability reporting in accordance with the CSRD, which are the ESRS. And I will show you a short overview of the ESRS in the next slide. But yeah, this is the overview of the ESRS, which means it's completely new in the implementation, but it is aligned with the Global Reporting Initiative standards because they are building on many years of experience and developments, and they aligned it quite good, but the disclosure requirements are far more comprehensive than in the GRI standards. But what is quite similar is that we have cross-section standards with general requirements how to use the standards and general disclosures concerning the strategy, the governance of the company, and like general information. And then they have the topic standards for environmental, social, and governance topics, which sets the disclosure requirements depending on the double materiality analysis of the materiality analysis, which sets out which topics you need to report on, and then you can use those standards with the quite comprehensive and quite demanding disclosure requirements. There will also be developed some sector-specific standards within probably this year. So for high industry standards or investment companies, there will be own standards. What I want to show you on this slide is a roadmap for the CSRD reporting. This is just an example for companies that have to publish the report in 2026 about the reporting year 2025. And this is a good overview. I don't want to go too much into detail right now, but companies should start with setting a level of ambition to create awareness in the company, within the team, conducting the materiality analysis, as mentioned before. Double materiality means to identify the impacts the company has on people, on environment, like the inside-out perspective, but also the outside-in perspective, which means the financial effects that environment and social topics can have on the company. After you set the baseline in the first year, knowing where you're at, what the status quo is, where are the gaps and where you need to go, you could dive deeper into the topics and try to find out, try to develop a CSRD compliance strategy, establish targets and key performance indicators, how to measure your progress. Also to establish an organization and processes. There's probably a lot of new processes that need to be implemented within the company, new roles, new responsibilities, and to also adapt in internal systems like data management software, for example. And having set these targets and the baseline, you can start with the first report covering all those topics. And from then on, monitoring and trying to improve the progress continuously. So I hope this helps you to get a short, really quick overview of what's going on in the European Union concerning ESG reporting, what are the core or centerpieces of the CSRD, how to getting started with the CSRD reporting. And with that, I'll hand over back to Nerida, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Johanna. And for anyone who has questions for Johanna, please pop them into the question and answer function, and we will get to them at the end of the presentations. And so now I'm going to hand over to Lina Wimmer, and she will be talking about navigating the landscape, general requirements of PPWR with a focus on packaging minimization. Over to you, Lina.
Thank you so much, Nerida. So I hope the handover did work. Yeah, so now you can hopefully see the slide. I thought about, because you're not all from Europe, so I thought about starting with a general glimpse to the packaging and packaging waste legislation in Europe, a bit into history, how it developed. So first of all, we had like the Packaging and Packaging Waste Directive, which entered into force back in 1994. And this directive was two times amended, one time in 2015 and one time in 2018, with concerns to plastic carrier bags and also to further the promotion of reuse and recycling of packaging waste back in 2018. However, those legislation is not so particularly integrated in all member states' legislation, and there are many shortcomings from this directive. Because of that, the European Commission thought about doing a revision of this directive, and they published a draft for the Packaging and Packaging Waste Regulation back in 2022. This was on the one hand published to the public, and on the other hand published also to the co-legislature, to the European Parliament and to the European Council. And as it is for the European way of legislation, those two parties, I would say, so the Parliament and the Council, also have to think about like the legislation proposal and have to publish their positions. And this was done in late 2023. But to make things more easier for you, I just want to go into the draft of the European Commission, because there are many other positions on many topics. If you have any question concerning the positions of the Parliament or Council, please feel free to answer or to ask them in the chat, and I will try to answer them after my input. So to start with the first provision of the Packaging and Packaging Waste Regulation, it's like recyclable packaging, which is also one of the most important provisions, I would say. It is regulated in Article 6, and it says that all packaging has to be recyclable by 2030. And there's a two-stage approach that will do that. So first, from 2030 onwards, packaging must meet design for recycling criteria. However, this criteria has still to be defined. And then in the second stage, from 2035 onwards, packaging must additionally be effectively collected, sorted, and recovered, also known as recycled at scale, to be deemed recyclable. For that, there are also exemptions. So until 2035, special packaging is exempted from this provision. And from 2030 onwards, innovative packaging is exempted for a maximum of 5 years after first placing the packaging on the market. What is also really important with recyclable packaging is that the Commission introduced recyclability performance grades A to E, with certain recyclability rates. And what is most important here is that if your packaging has a recyclability under 70%, it may not longer be placed on the European market after 2030. So you have to look, if you are placing packaging on the European market, that your packaging has a recyclability over 70% from 2030 onwards. Another really important provision is the provision in Article 7 about minimum recycled content in plastic packaging. Here, every plastic packaging must contain a minimum recycled PCR content starting with 2030. This is meant per packaging unit according to the Commission. And also here, the implementation and the methodology of calculation and verification has still to be worked out and also published. For example, there will be provisions for every plastic packaging, but what is most important, contact-sensitive packaging has a really high content that has to be reached from 2030 onwards, and then also even a higher content from 2040 onwards. That leads us to reuse and refill, which is managed in Article 10 26 and 27. It says that reusable packaging must be conceived, designed, and placed on the market in such a way that it can be reused or refilled. And all those packaging types has to be part of a reuse system. So the European Union wants to establish a reuse system for cold and hot beverages, for takeaway meals, for beverages in general, and also for transport packaging. And what is also very important is the transport packaging for transporting goods between different sites and the same member states have to be 100% reusable from 2030 onwards. So if you have transport packaging between member states, you have to reach this 100% goal by 2030. To continue, also important is waste prevention, which is managed in Article 38 of the PPWR, and it says that the member states have to tackle their waste. So there are certain reduction targets that might seem a bit short or a bit low, with like 5% until 2030, but they are based on like the base year 2018 and per capita. So meaning 2018 is also like in the past, like it was 6 years ago, and the waste also continued to grow. So it means an effective reduction by 19% until 2030 if you look at the 5% that have been introduced by the European Commission. So also a really ambitious goal to reach those targets. And that brings us to the focus point of today's input, the packaging minimization. So by 2030, excuse me, the packaging weight and volume has to be as low as necessary. However, the safety and functionality of the packaging has still to be guaranteed. When looking at e-commerce, transport, and collective packaging, there has to be a certain empty space ratio of 40% per packaging unit. So all those misleading packaging with double walls, double bottoms, etc. are prohibited from 2030 onwards. And also the reusability of packaging must be considered when designing packaging. What is also regulated, or what is seen in Annex 4 of the PPWR, are a list of performance criteria. So you have to ensure that the product protection is on point, and also that with like packaging minimization, all the manufacturing processes as well as the logistics are still manageable, and also all the requirements concerning information to the consumer can still be placed on the packaging. Also, hygiene and safety are two important topics. And of course, all the legal requirements, not only for the PPWR, but all legal requirements concerning packaging has to be fulfilled. And all the provisions in the PPWR, like recycled content, recyclability, and reuse, have also be fulfilled to meet like the packaging minimization criteria. In the second part of the annex, they are talking about the assessment methodology and determination of the minimum packaging volume and weight. However, they are not really talking about the methodology behind it. They just say that like you have to explain yourself in the technical documentation why you chose this kind of packaging and why it is the minimized version of the packaging. So you have to include in this technical documentation, like for each performance criterion, a list of design requirements and why you have chosen this criterion and this way of doing your packaging. And also you have to describe like the assessment, how you determined that this is the minimized version of your packaging, and any test results and market studies or investigations concerning that. As I already briefly mentioned, the methodology, how to assess actually the packaging minimization, there is nothing in there. So Circular Analytics is currently working on a project to determine a methodology on how to minimize, or how to say that your packaging is minimized. So concerning lowest weight, lowest CO2 footprint, and many more provisions. So if you want to have any further information on that, please feel free to contact me, or also we can keep you up to date on that, maybe in a following webinar. Yeah, and that leads me to the next step at the European Union concerning the PPWR. So currently there are the trialogue discussions, meaning that the Commission, the Parliament and the Council, both or all three standpoints come together and they try to make one uniform legislation. And this legislation has then at the latest be passed in the April session of the Parliament, because it's the last session of before the election. So the PPWR has to be passed, otherwise it will be it will be probably in the draw for the next like half year or year. We will see that. And yeah, with the European election coming up in June of 2024, we have like a really strict deadline that has to be met, that in order that the PPWR can be passed in this year, and also the first provision coming into effect with 2025. So this would be it for me. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask in the chat, and also we can discuss later. Thank you.
Thank you, Lina. And I'm going to hand over to Manfred, because he's got quite a lot to present now. So over to you, Manfred, to talk about sustainable packaging.
Okay. Thank you, Nerida. Here, what I will do now is I will look at the PPWR and here at CSRD here and give you here a few guidances how to tackle here these questions in the future. I hope I get my next slide. Oh yeah, it's here. So we have packaging minimization on the one hand, as Lina told you, and packaging waste reduction here as well. Just give you one implication. Packaging waste reduction would mean if you here look at material substitution and you think of here putting a PET bottle with a beverage on the market, it would be contrary to the intentions of the PPWR to substitute here this PET bottle with a glass bottle, because a glass single-use bottle, because this is much heavier. Yeah, so you wouldn't reach here the goals of PPWR with this substitution here. And what we did here is now we calculated a set of key performance indicators for packaging, which will be relevant here for you to assess the suitability of packaging on the European market. So of course, here part of this KPIs would be the weight, the recyclability assessment of the materials, then here the fulfillment of design for recycling criteria. So you need here the exact composition of the material, and these data have to flow along the whole supply chain from the packaging manufacturer to the brand owner to the retailer. This is one of the challenges here in Europe here to implement such a system. Then the carbon footprint is a very important KPI, then the quality of the recycled after here recycling here the waste, the recycled content, and the emptyability, because this has a lot of impact here on sustainability assessment of packaging. From the CSRD, we got here the requirement of the carbon footprint, and this will be the second part of my presentation, where I show you the need here to develop a standardized methodology, and I will introduce you to the different concept of Cradle-to-Gate LCA and Cradle-to-Cradle or Cradle-to-Grave LCA, because different players in the supply chain have to deliver here different carbon footprints to the system in order to prevent double counting here. For this to understand here, the scope 1, 2, 3 global warming potentials or scopes coming into play. So scope 1 means these are emissions that occur within the company's system. That means fossil fuels being used for producing here packaging, for example. Scope 2 are indirect emissions that result from purchased energy, and the generation, of course, of electricity here will give rise to emissions as well. And now with CSRD reporting here, all these companies are required to look at scope 3 emissions as well. And the scope 3 emissions are emissions here that occur outside the boundaries of the company. So for a packaging manufacturer, it is the raw material purchased. So polyethylene granulate or paper purchased. This is a scope 3 emission for a packaging manufacturer. For a brand owner that who buys the packaging from a packaging manufacturer, the whole packaging, and of course the raw materials for food, for example, is scope 3 emission. Yeah, and the CSRD requires now companies, that means retailers, brands, packaging manufacturers here to publish here these carbon footprints of their whole scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. Yes, and that means these companies have here to identify impacts, risk, and opportunities of this of their productions here measured in greenhouse gas emissions as well, and they have to define strategy and targets. That means a brand owner has to define now a target how to reduce their carbon footprints, and reducing carbon, the scope 3 carbon footprint means reducing the carbon footprint of the package they buy. Yeah, so there is automatically here now the requirement on the suppliers to reduce their carbon footprints, so that here the brand in this case can reduce their scope 3 carbon footprint. So, and now coming to the question how to measure now the carbon footprint of a packaging. Here we have two ways here to calculate carbon footprint. The first one is the so-called Cradle-to-Gate carbon footprint, where I measure all the emissions from the raw material phase till the factory gate of the packaging manufacturer. Yeah, that's here Cradle-to-Gate. And Cradle-to-Grave means here you take into account the use phase and the end of life phase as well. So that's mean collecting, recycling, and so on. Yeah. And here to avoid double counting, here for packaging manufacturers, here a Cradle-to-Gate LCA is the correct instrument to measure here the carbon footprint. For a brand owner or for a retailer, it would be Cradle-to-Grave. Yeah, so there are two different carbon footprints for the same material, for the same packaging on the market. And I just show you what that means in practice here for an HDPE bottle with a polypropylene closure. Yeah, if you calculate according to the European Product Environmental Footprint methodology, Cradle-to-Grave life cycle assessment, you see that you get to 80 grams for the whole package. This is higher than for Cradle-to-Gate because you have additional emissions in the end of life phase. So there are two different ways to calculate this carbon footprint, and the cradle-to-grave will give you a different result than cradle-to-gate. And in this case, cradle-to-grave is higher than cradle-to-gate. Here the third column is just here using another A factor in this circular footprint formula of the PEF. This is very technical. It doesn't concern you at the moment, but I just wanted to show you that there are two different values you have to taken care of. And for an aluminium tray, you get here a different result, because in this case, cradle-to-grave is lower than cradle-to-gate, because the recycling of the aluminium will give you here a credit. Yeah, so it will reduce the carbon footprint of the material. Yeah, so it's going here to be a little bit complicated. And now I want to come back to that, what Nerida said in the beginning. It's very, very important to use here harmonized methods. The European Union here has the PEF, the Product Environmental Footprint methodology, as their standards. And they should be used for products going on the European market, because when you use other LCA standards, you will get, even when you use the cradle-to-gate approach, you will receive different results, and it would give you incomparable results then. So this is very important here to standardize this factor, this methodology. For a packaging manufacturer now, as you told you, the right and correct methodology would be to use a cradle-to-gate LCA. And here, when we work here with our customers, here as a first stage, we do a streamlined LCA, which is not a lot of work. We use here industry data, for example, from the EcoInvent database, where there are here published emission data for packaging as well. And in the second step, of course, because you have you are in a competition here with other material or packaging manufacturers on the market, you have to refine this calculation with your company-specific data, because what you have to show is that you are going to reduce the carbon footprint of your packaging you manufacture. So you need a strategy here as well, how to do that. Yeah, and this is what you see here in this only in the second stage approach, because when you use a streamlined LCA, you just use industry average data and not your specific company data. For brand owners and retailers, here they have to use cradle-to-grave LCAs and use the cradle-to-gate LCAs of the packaging manufacturers as their input. Yeah, so it's not that easy here to implement. So now to putting everything together, here, when you look at design for sustainability rules now in this context of CSRD and PPWR, first of all, and this is the basic function of the packaging, you have to ensure product protection. And then a second step, you have to calculate here KPIs for your packaging. And here you have this recyclability as most important KPIs, packaging weight, the carbon footprint. I discussed with you here the details, how to calculate that, emptyability. These are the most important KPIs you have to know. And then others which are important as well, such as recycled content and so on. And the next step, because you want to know if you are better than the competition or not, you have to do a benchmarking. And this is what Charlotte will tell you here in the next presentation. And fourth step is, of course, to optimize your packaging against these KPIs. So the conclusion of my talk is, for PPWR, there is required a set of sustainability indicators, KPIs, you have to calculate for your packaging. Packaging has to be minimized. The harmonization of recyclability assessment is currently in progress. And the data flow along the whole supply chain is of very high importance. For the CSRD, you have these two different concepts of cradle-to-gate and cradle-to-grave carbon footprint, and here the topic of the LCA methodology. Thanks a lot. I will give over to Nerida.
Thank you, Manfred. A lot to unpack there, particularly the life cycle assessment aspect of it. So I think we might have to do a second webinar just on the LCA. Over to you, Charlotte. Charlotte's going to talk about a roadmap to compliance.
Perfect, and thank you, Nerida, and hello from my side. So it's always the burden of the last to speak in fast mode. So see, I'm happy to guide you through to a kind of a summary of what we have been said by previous speakers, but also give you a guidance on action points, what to do in accordance to the PPWR and CSRD. So just very quick, we had a lot of new requirements coming from legal changes in the European Union. So on the one hand side, we do have the reporting demand. So sustainability reporting is on a whole new level now. Once we have a wide range of companies, but also we think it's kind of also equal to the financial reporting. So terms like due diligence, double materiality will be also on the table of sustainability managers. So you need to have your data ready, collect the data to do the mandatory reporting. And as Manfred just explained, that the reporting is extended not only to your own company, but also you need to be aware of for example, the emissions of your suppliers. And on the other side, we have the strict demands from the packaging and packaging waste regulations. So an assessment of the packaging portfolio based on sustainability indicators like recyclability, recycled content, or minimization will be necessary, and this might also lead to re-evaluation of your packaging strategy. So what do you need to do to be compliant with the packaging and packaging waste regulation? I will keep this on a very high level since Lina already did a deep dive into the PPWR. So first and foremost, I think the most important thing is that you need to be aware of the performance of your packaging based on the required sustainability indicators. So as heard, with 2030, all packaging on the European market must be recyclable, above 70%. And once you've done this, let's say, performance check, this might lead to optimization of your packaging, really to reduce the resource consumption, to be more circular, including recycled content, or following reuse logic. And also, but this is not explicitly mentioned in the packaging and packaging waste regulation, but nevertheless, say, a driver for overall sustainability of the packaging and the product, an improvement of the emptyability of your packaging would be necessary. And this is not done one time. You need to continuously monitor the sustainability parameters of your packaging, because it will be 2030 is the first date, but nevertheless we see that there will be more required in the future. And as Manfred already touched the point of the benchmarks, and you need to know how your packaging performs, but also how it is in comparison to the market. And what we did here in circular analytics together with the University of Applied Science of Vienna, we did a packaging benchmarking to really see how packaging performs in comparison. So to keep this short, we assessed a whole range of packaging from a sector, the dairy sector, and assessed them based on the performance on the environmental side, but also in performance due to circularities. So our parameters were, for example, recyclability, recycling content. This might sound familiar to you from the packaging and packaging waste regulation, but also we assessed them due to the direct impact or indirect impact on environment. And what we have seen here, that first of all, for each category, there are a lot of different packaging designs, and also they perform different due to the design and the composition of the packaging. On the right side of this slide, we have done a juxtaposition of the recyclability and the carbon footprint of the packaging, just to see how do they perform. Is there a difference? And what we see, yes, there is a difference, and it doesn't mean if a packaging is recyclable that the carbon footprint is brilliant. So to see here is butter packaging, and most of the packaging that we have assessed were in the form of fiber-based aluminum compounds. So let's call it butter paper. What we see here, due to the light weight, the carbon footprint is very good. It's in the yellow circle. But the recyclability of those compounds is not so good, less than 30%. So to be compliant with the packaging and packaging waste regulation, we need to higher this percentage up to 70%. And on the other side, when we look at the purple packaging, rigid polypropylene trays, the recyclability is quite good, but the carbon footprint is, I would say, on a higher level. So there we see clearly the need to optimize packaging on different parameters. You cannot only increase the recyclability and do not care about the other sustainability indicators. This is for, let's say, the assessment side, but also the CSRD leads us really to reporting of all our sustainability actions. And if you see yourself in a company, in a larger company, like here on the right upper corner, and those requirements will be quite important to you very soon. So 2025, large companies that fulfill 2 or 3 of these criteria, so over 40 million net sale, more than 20 million euro balance sheet, and over 250 employees need to fulfill the CSRD already next year. And so what would be the steps for you in such a company? You need to be aware of the environmental impacts of your suppliers and supplier product. And watch out, there we have this Cradle-to-Gate approach to do this life cycle analysis. Because why do we need that? Because the scope of the carbon footprint analysis is scope 1 to 3. So for your entire company, including also the product and portfolio. And once you've done all of this, of course, the sustainability strategy should be, maybe developed in first instance, or you need to adjust it based on the CSRD requirements. So for you as a company on the European market, how do you act to be prepared for the CSRD, but also for the packaging? In both cases, the first steps is to collect and analyze the data. So you need to be aware of the current status quo of the packaging you're using based on the sustainability KPIs. And in this case, you also have conducted a benchmarking to see where am I on the market. And also in terms of CSRD, it's important to evaluate the environmental impact of your suppliers' products. And we go into the reporting phase. Being compliant to the CSRD And once done so, we think really a strategy formation would be necessary so that you draft a sustainability strategy that is aligned with the current European requirements, because this is not only for European companies, this is when you place your packaging on the European market. And as mentioned before, a continuous monitoring of those sustainability parameters will be necessary, and also you need to ensure that you're always aligned with the regulatory demands, which can be quite fast changing. So I'm the last speaker. I'd like to give you a take-home message for our entire webinar. So what we believe is that transparency is necessary. So of all environmental impacts through the entire supply chain, we need transparency here, that everybody is aware of the emissions they are producing. In terms of packaging, holistic packaging optimization will be necessary to fulfill the requirements, especially of the packaging and packaging waste regulation. So minimize resource, but also enhancing circular economy and principles, for example, recyclability, including secondary materials. And also, I think recyclability is the key term we need to watch out. And all of this, you need to continuously monitor your sustainability parameters. I think this, I don't know, I feel like I'm hammering the message, but the last is important that you do this in a continuous way and always assess the packaging. So I think I have been fast, but we are at the end, at least from the presentation side, Nerida. So back to you.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. And I'm mindful of the fact that Lina has been frantically answering questions in the background. So thank you so much for that. I just wanted to quickly go through and see if there was a couple of questions, because I can see Lina is typing. Dario's just asking, will the final version of the PPWR be closer to the one proposed by the Commission, or will we move towards the amended version of Parliament, less restrictive? Who would like to answer that?
I can do it. Yeah, I mean, we will see what comes out of the trialogue discussions, but however, as the Parliament and the Council have similar opinions on some of the provisions, it could be that it will be a bit like, a bit not so strict than the Council position.
The next one is actually from an Australian, Angela Yee, but it's a very good question, and I think we're going to probably need to do a second webinar on reuse and refill, Manfred. But the reuse definition, does it have a number of washes or length of warranty? And I think that's, it goes to those questions, what does the definition of reuse and refill look like?
So there is no common definition of reusability at the moment. It is still being in discussion. So there was this proposal by Sweden here that set the target of 10 revolutions, 10 trips, and there could be another definition and another value for cardboard and paper that is reusable. So we still don't know yet.
Mm-hmm. Joan has a fantastic question. For calculating the carbon footprint, is PEF methodology used, or just the CFF is implemented?
There is CFF here is part of the PEF methodology, and it is the whole PEF methodology used here in this European context.
And when we're talking about methodologies and standardization, Manfred, things like the PEF methodology, in an ideal world, if it was harmonized globally, would be more appropriate, correct?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's my wish for the future would be nice if we had globalized harmonization. What we might do is I'll pick one more question, and then we will answer all of these questions, I promise you, offline. I think I'm going to find one. I did have one question, the design for recycling criteria, and this probably goes to Lina. Where is that at?
Pardon, I didn't get the question.
Design for recycling criteria, what does that look like in a very short question and answer?
I mean, there will be delegated acts concerning the design for recycling criteria. However, the CEN standardization is currently working already on some of the packaging materials. So we will see what's also the timeline within the PPWR, which is then in the final version, hopefully.
Manfred, just one last one for you, because there's so many fantastic questions here that I'm looking forward to seeing the answers. But will the EU allow a streamlined LCA for the carbon footprint of packaging?
I would say it's a first step. Of course, it will be allowed if there is nothing better available. But of course, the goal should be to have company-specific data and go into a full LCA.
Okay, so before everybody goes, I just wanted to share very briefly some other available resources from the WPO. And also one other thing that I would love to know, doesn't have to be now, but maybe offline, we would love to know from today, what additional webinars would you like to see in the future? With the WPO, we have many partners, just like Circular Analytics, and we have other partners as well. But one of the most important things is we try to talk to each other on a regular basis. So we have 66 member countries around the world in the WPO, and we try to make sure that we have at minimum 2 board meetings when working groups where we discuss exactly what we're discussing today. And the idea of it is that we can learn from each other, take learnings back to our own countries and regions, and hopefully apply more consistent, harmonized approaches to packaging and circular economy for packaging. And so we have a position paper that's always available once a year. It's free of charge on the WPO website. One of our really proud partnerships is, in fact, with Circular Analytics and the University of Applied Science in Austria and ECR Community. And it is a global packaging design for recycling guide. And it's really important to our members to provide them access to tools like this free of charge and readily available in multiple languages. Again, I would encourage you to have a look at this. It's available on our website to download. And we're also working really hard to make sure that it's easy for people to understand. It has a traffic light system. It covers all materials, all components, all substrates. And so it is unique compared to many other guides around the world where they're specific to specific materials or substrates. This one covers all materials, also all substrates and components. In addition, we're working very hard with our members around the world to ensure that it's translated into many languages. At the moment, we are at 11. And we have a number of other languages being translated right now. But for us, as the WPO, our goal is to ensure that this is accessible to everyone around the world in whatever language they need it to be in. We also have a number of waste stream mapping tools. And if you are working in exporting and you want to try and understand recyclability of packaging materials and packaging in other countries that you're going to export into, again, I would encourage you to go on WPO website and have a look at this, because this is the truth and the reality of what can and can't be recycled in those countries. We have them available in the traffic light system, so it links back into the Global Packaging Design for Recycling Guide. They are dynamic tools and they do change regularly. In addition, we have the World Star Packaging Awards, and many people here today have probably won a World Star Packaging Award. And we have 2 very important special awards. We have Safe Food Packaging and also Sustainable Packaging. The idea of the Sustainable Packaging Design Special Award is to help you to look at best practice examples from around the world and again, take learnings from them. And we also have the Packaging That Saves Food Special Award, and we're growing this every year. A new thing that we have just launched is case studies, and the case studies are available on the website. And we have a number of case studies on sustainability and safe food. They are all World Star winners of recent years, and we will continue to grow this from the 2024 World Star winners as well. Again, these are fantastic case studies for you to see what's happening around the world in sustainability and in safe food, and to take learnings back to your own company or to your own country. And the last thing which we are going to publish in the next few months is we worked with our WPO members at the end of last year to find out what sustainability really looks like to them. And we're really looking forward to providing the results to everybody shortly. So keep an eye out on that. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Johanna, Lina, Manfred, Charlotte. We thank you so much for your time. You provided so much information. I think a lot of people will probably be a little bit overwhelmed, but I think this is the start of a conversation that we need to continue. If anyone here today has any ideas on what they would like to see for webinars, please reach out, and we will be sharing the recording with everyone so that you can share it with your colleagues as well. So thank you to all the people that are watching today. We thank you, and we look forward to you coming back to another WPO event in the future. So have a wonderful day. Good night to all of the Australians, and we will see you at our next event, and please stay safe in the meantime. Thank you.